This is the Chinwag Junkie Podcast. I'm your host, Joy Stone. Welcome to another episode.
Look, my background, I spent, 20 odd years in the security industry, rose up to, through to management levels, and I hated every minute of it. My natural propensity is always to be on the side of the employee or on the side of the meek, right? I'm wired to kind of have a problem with some corporate dynamics when it comes to management, because your job there is really to maximize profits for the company, which at times, many times, involves certain treatments, certain attitudes towards employees, which is not completely a bad thing by the company, because they've got to protect their interests legally, the way that the legal system's are drawn up with workers' rights and pay and stuff like that. So it's a very complex issue, but I'd always be the manager, the black sheep manager, being pulled aside saying, why do you always take their side? You've got to do it. And yeah, I just hated every minute of that. But it paid the bills. Around about 7 years ago now, I woke up one day and just went, okay, yeah, this is not really what I want. I'm not being true to myself. I've lost my way. I've kind of just let life take me in a direction that I'm just not happy with. So I turned my back on all of that, just in one go. I just left it. And ever since then, I've been exploring the deeper meaning of following your own path, earning a living for my family, being completely true to myself and outside of this fictional game of monopoly that central banks and government treasuries have created worldwide, right? It's spread worldwide to the point where people are dependent on a system, if we can call that like, employment, that they create, and they tweak it like a little equalizer by lifting interest rates here or giving, benefits in certain ways and controlling this fictitious game that millions and millions of people are in. And I just saw that for the first time and went, I don't want to be a part of that. So, it's taken me probably 5 of the 7 years to stabilize my situation financially to the point where I'm almost completely independent of the entire thing, right? Yep. So irrespective of what happens geopolitically, or like what happened with COVID, and what's about to happen, which we will touch on quite profoundly in this talk, I suspect. I just got into blockchain and crypto from a perspective, a few years back, thanks to a dear friend of mine, Roman Light. Cheers, Roman. Love you, brother. And Roman came and stayed at my house. He was here for a while before he went on, moved on to a wonderful chapter in his life. And while he was here at my house, he introduced me to crypto. And
which crypto?
Yeah, like
Bitcoin?
He introduced me to the whole concept, right? Not any single coin or anything. Although Bitcoin was one of them, EOS was another, and all the big ones, I think, from memory. There was 3 or 4, and he set up a little wallet for me, and we transacted between the two of us and stuff. And what I immediately saw was the implications of this, not so much my own benefit that I could make financially. That then became something, right? But immediately I was just like, wow, this is going to change the world. And I was already balls deep into research with central banks and how that whole thing works, because in my own realization of walking away from the matrix, the first step was, why am I doing this? And who am I? I need to know myself and why I'm feeling this and why I'm making this decision. Because I've got a beautiful wife who's the love of my life, and I've got two kids that, you know, are just incredible souls. I'm a dad, number one in my life. That's my number one role, is being a dad, and a faithful husband. So I just I deep dived into all this stuff, like, heavily.
Yep.
And sat my family down, sat my wife down and said, baby, the next few years, get ready. This is going to be a wild ride. It could get tough financially. I'm giving you a heads up. I don't really understand what the hell is going on with me, but this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking of doing. And she just held my hand and she's just like, Mike, you do it. I'll support you. Do it. I believe in you. You know, you've never steered us wrong up to now. So, and that gave me the strength, knowing that she kind of was like, go do it. That was it, you know, and the rest is history. I started doing live casts and inviting people to share my journey into this complete unknown. Built up a nice social media presence, really deep dove into blockchain and crypto, self-determination, self-governance, right? And where I started to see that the world was heading, and that really nobody, when I say nobody, I mean the mainstream person, the average person out there in the Western world, not just Australia, but everywhere, has no idea what's going on.
No.
Has no idea that we're in a slow, long collapse, and that legacy systems are falling to pieces.
It seems,
and what they're...
It seems to be accelerating the last few years, I would say. The collapse, that is.
Yes.
There's definitely holes in everything, I would say. Everything from media all the way through to how the centralized banking works. Like, people are starting to realize that you can only adjust interest rates so much to quote unquote control inflation. And once that bubble gets too big, we're seeing it in America at the moment. You're right. They're up to what, 8% or something, 7.5%, 8% inflation rate. And I mean, that's devastating to most, I would say most people, you know, and at the moment here in Australia, money is cheap. Like, you know, centralized money from the bank is cheap to get. You don't have to have a whole lot, and they will hand you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and interest rates are low at the moment. But I can't see the interest rates staying low with the rest of the Western world, like you're saying, with the rest of the Western world, particularly America, inflation's going up. I can't see Australia not being affected by that at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to happen, and it's going to be horrible for people that are not in a situation where they can help themselves, where they can make it through, ride the storm, if you will. I don't
Look, we may not see the effects for a little bit longer than what we may expect, because we're now coming into a global downturn where activity is going to drop, right? And that means that the velocity of money will probably slow, especially as they start lifting interest rates and tightening that up. We'll see the velocity of money really slow down, which could mask inflation a little bit for a while.
And I absolutely agree with that. But they've already talked about lifting the interest rates the last whatever bloody meeting they call it, and they came out of it and they didn't do a thing because they said that they couldn't.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. So the reason that I don't like centralized banking and all the rest of it, I think we should, like your mug says, decentralize everything, right? And I agree with that. I think that that a free market is the best choice. Sometimes it does suck, like you just talked about with your security job. Sometimes it does suck. Sometimes it sucks really bad. but I think it's the best thing that we have at the moment. Like, I'm not talking crony capitalism or anything like that. Like there's special interest groups and all that sort of stuff. I think the people should really choose what happens in their life, and I believe that it should be with that, like that with everything, not just with day-to-day life, but with everything.
Yeah.
I think if a bank wants to charge 25% interest on their home loans, then they should be allowed to. I also think that that bank would probably go under pretty quick, if considering there's other banks that are charging half or a quarter of what they are. And that's what I believe. I really do believe that. And the centralized way of life and the it seems to be getting bigger. It's getting more centralized, more powerful, and it's getting bigger, and it's spreading everywhere.
Yeah, the problem with it is that we've got a kind of perfect storm at the moment where centralization has taken an evolutionary path where it is increasingly centralizing, which is creating a global cohesion, right? So it's killing diversity.
Yeah.
Some people call it like, a one world government, whatever, which it's comprised of separate governments, right? But as we've seen, there's a field linking them all that is one. And when something goes wrong, they're all acting in unison because they're linked so tightly together by economic forces, what we could call political correctness at a level of, central banking and governments across the world, where they all have to kind of act together.
Yeah.
And they suffer from fear of that, just how an individual does, right? No individual wants to be left out, and no country wants to be left out. For the very reason that we're seeing with Russia at the moment. No country wants that to be done to them, right? So, and that brings up a whole, swagger of issues. So this centralization is happening at a time where the actual system is crumbling. So you've got both of these opposing things happening together at the one time and in the one place, which is the whole world, right? So what happens when you're a kid, right, and you're playing with your brother or your best mate in a game where he's absolutely kicking your ass, right? And you're going to lose. As a kid, what you do, you throw all the pieces off the game, or you say, let's start again, let's reset, right? And you do a reset.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening now financially, right? They want to reset. Why? Because they're reaching the end and they know it. So, and we all know it. Even someone who is not a professional or well-versed in how all of this happens, most people have got a feel for it, like something's really not right here. You can't print money endlessly and not have repercussions for it. And let's face it, politicians lie for a living, and they do what they're told for a living. A politician that actually is thinking for themselves, A, and in service to the meek, B, is a dead politician, or a politician that is bankrupt, caught snorting cocaine, caught with a hooker, whatever, but not someone who is in power.
Yeah.
So, decentralization is happening now as a matter of universal balance. They can't stop it, right? And this is the thing that a lot of people say that they can stop it. Well, they're not, and it is growing exponentially. It's just that people don't understand what is going on. So they're forming opinions based on ignorance, right? And this is a big part of mainstream society. So this is helping the centralized authorities deal with their crumbling situation. If everybody knew what was actually going on, and everybody knew the difference between custodial and non-custodial wallets and non-KYC jurisdictions within the blockchain and crypto world, and what that exactly means. The fact that you can swap and move money around, earn money that does not require any know your customer laws, that doesn't require an identity of any form, not even your name, not even your nickname, right? It requires none of that. And you're completely disintermediating the entire banking system and the government in one go, right? Every time you go into that space. And for everyone that has had a Ledger Nano X non-custodial wallet set up with my help, they know that at no point did it ever ask them, what's your name? Not even what's your email, right? Zero, none. That is freedom, because no one needs to know that, right? Same with the DeFi protocols that are going on right now, where you can earn returns by locking your crypto away, where you're not even using a banking institution of any form, right? And that whole process is happening with no KYC in a completely open public protocol that anybody can participate in, when not a single email or even a nickname is required. Now, when you start thinking like that, and you're like, how is that even happening? And you start looking into it, you realize that the reason why it's happening is because it's outside of the jurisdiction of your ASICs, your ATOs, your SECs, your IRSs. The only time you go into their jurisdiction is when you use their money, because it's not your money, right? Like, it's not your bank account. You're just renting it. It's not yours, it's theirs. So you just don't use theirs. Don't exchange your Aussie dollars for Bitcoin or any other crypto, right? And there's a process to that, right? It's not that simple, but it is, if you build up to that point where you're just earning a currency that actually belongs to you. Because when you put it into a non-custodial wallet, this is the only form of money in the history of humanity where
it's yours.
My money, it's mine. It's nobody else's, right? That's never happened before. And the fact that it's open and public and has immutability and is decentralized, right? So if civilization fails, the second someone in 100 years puts a cord in the wall and electricity starts again, the entire Bitcoin network just comes to life exactly where it left off, right? With nobody running it. And each node just starts to come to life, boom, and it just continues on. Everything happens as though, and nothing else on earth has that capability just yet, right?
Yeah.
So when we start looking at that and we start saying, how does this work? And we start studying it and then start using that footprint or blueprint for politics, for voting here in Australia, right? And every other jurisdiction, and for so many other things. Then it becomes apparent what crypto is. Then it becomes apparent what blockchain offers. And it's all to do with freedom, personal freedom, the individual, privacy. You know, as a government, you simply don't need to know the things you're demanding of me. So it
completely agree.
Away. Yeah.
Yeah. So with the CBA, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, they a few months ago said that they were going to start trading in crypto, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing that an organization such as the Commonwealth Bank is offering that platform?
Yeah. Okay. So I would use the analogy of a mafia boss. All right. A mafia boss knocks on my door and says, Mike, look, I hear you need assistance. Like, would you like me to help you? Right? I would be very reluctant to want that kind of a relationship, because I'm dealing with forces that I don't want to deal with to begin with. So why in God's beautiful earth would you deal with something like crypto through a bank that is the complete diametric opposite of what crypto stands for?
Yeah.
You know, it makes no sense. Why would you even use crypto via KYC channels, right? It makes no sense.
So KYC channels is things like CoinSpot, yes?
Yes, KYC channels is anything that's asking you, who are you?
Yeah.
You know, you need to prove who you are because, you know, we want to sell your data, right? Yeah. That's what it is. And they say it's for your own safety, right? Yeah. So they're creating huge databases, which then become targets for hackers to hack and release your information. So it's not anything to do with your privacy and your safety at all.
Yeah.
Same as everything that they do, right? It's so they can manage it, so they can monetize it, and so they can tax it.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what it's really about. And all of that is done in the name of the safety and protection of the community, which a large portion of the community buys into. That's fine, right?
Yeah.
There's no use flogging a dead horse. We're never, ever going to change their mind because they sit in front of the box 24/7. It's, you know, let them have that. If they want that, let them have it. They should have it, right? This is all about choice. But at the same token, we should have what we want as well. And we can, but it takes a certain amount of investment and study and deep dive. This is something that's not going to be worked out just by, you know, posting memes up on social media. That's not going to cut it, right? And you're probably going to get a little bit burnt if you just do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so again, I completely agree with you, but that is one question when I talk about crypto, and I'm no expert on it. I can't take that claim. But when I talk about crypto with, you know, people at work, friends, whatever, and you know, it always comes up like, you know, CoinSpot and you know, now the CBA is trading and you know, what's the difference? And it always leads into the digital currency that, again, Western countries seem to be dipping their toe into. They seem to be, you know, dabbling. Again, I think it's going to be terrible. It's just an easier way for them. Like, as it is cash, that if you have that, at least you kind of have that. With a digital currency, it's just literally a push of a button and you're locked out of society entirely.
Yes, that's right.
And again, the reason, the thing that prompted me is that Queensland's bringing in a digital license. I know New South Wales has already done it in 2019, I believe. But yeah, it seems like for the last 2 years with the sign-in, check-in apps and everything else, it seems like this digital ID isn't just a fringe conspiracy theory anymore. It's really at the front. It's there's bills being passed or contested rather, to basically outlaw it. The top levels of government are talking about it in Parliament. What do you make of a digital ID? Like, how far can it go? What can they do with it? Is it going to be on your social score, like in China with the social credit system, which I fully believe it will, but what's your take on it?
All right. What I'm about to share with you here is publicly available for anybody that wants to check up on this, right?
Yeah.
So let's start with digital identity and where and why digital identity is so important. We've got KYC infrastructure in place because of data and because of control. So fundamentally, the system is about control. So that's what KYC does. KYC is the actual plug-in portal that provides all the control for everything. And they already have got, through the KYC infrastructure and software that governments and intelligence agencies are already using and have been using for a long time, right? they've already got the means to be able to have a look at spending patterns and irregularities and stuff like that, right? And building profiles on each individual.
Mhm.
And when the profile doesn't match the behavior of the individual, it brings up a red flag, and they then look into it manually, right?
Mhm.
So that's already there. What digital identity does is it introduces factors that are coming, right, where it's going to link what we can call attributes. So digital attributes on this side of the column. Those digital attributes are things like date of birth, address, whatever information you've got on bills, different bills, who's your internet provider, things like that. These are all attributes, right? And that is part of your digital identity. So, and they're attached to anything that is digital and that has got your identity attached to it. So your driver's license is not just a digital picture, a JPEG of your license. It's not just that, right? It's the beginning. It's the first layer of a multi-layered freeway of information that will go to and from in real time, right? So I'm going to build on this, but when you get to the end product, you pass a speeding camera, it takes a picture of you, right? The fine is immediately in real time deducted from your centralized wallet using digital currency in real time. You don't get sent a penalty notice. You don't have X amount to, it just happens in real time. So we're talking about everything that I'm going to share with you now. We're talking about a real time system.
Yep.
So it happens all in real time. So the first layer of digital identity are the attributes. The second layer that goes on top of that are then activities. So these are the two sides of digital identity, your attributes and your activities. Activity is anything that is linked to your digital profile and to each one of your attributes that cover all social media posts, every single post you've liked, every single post you've commented on, every post you've shared across all platforms, right? Who your friends are, what sort of stuff you're downloading on the internet, what sites you're looking at, how long you're spending on those sites, right? Where you're focusing on. So all of that generates data and goes towards your digital activity. The digital activities then cross-reference between your digital attributes, and it forms a very precise profile of you. And that is a product that makes a lot of money, right? It's one of the biggest industries in the world right now.
Yeah.
So
Facebook,
if you look at, yes. And it's all combining now, right? So we saw Facebook get their ass handed to them because they tried to release a stable coin that was challenging what the central banks are trying to do with their CBDCs, which is a central bank digital currency, right? Which is another way of just saying a digital Australian dollar, right? It's not a crypto. It doesn't have to be on a blockchain. It's not public. It's not open. It's not borderless. It's not censorship resistant, right? And it's not neutral. That money is loaded with the agenda of the government of the time. And if you are someone who's going against the agenda of the government of that time, then that is weaponized and used against you.
Now that you've brought that up, the government of the time is one of the main things that I seem to be arguing with, not arguing, I don't get in that involved, but, always talking to people that I know, people on Facebook. It's always, this government would never do X. It's like, well, what about the next one? Would they do it? What if Donald Trump was in power? Would he do it? What if Hitler reincarnated, come back to life, and he somehow became Prime Minister of Australia? Would he do it? People are they forget fucking what happened yesterday, and they can't see what's in front of their nose, and it's so fucking frustrating. Sorry
Yeah,
about
and it's a
that.
good point.
I just had to get it off my chest though.
It's a perfect point, and it's true. This is one of the Achilles heels of democracy. Not so much an Achilles heel of democracy, but more an Achilles heel of the price of convenience and the cost of not stepping up to the plate as a population, right?
Yeah.
We've been lazy.
Yeah.
And now we've ended up with something like a forced preferential voting system that has now turned it into a corrupt cartel of, you know, choose this meth dealer or choose that cocaine dealer or choose this. And it's like, well, why do we have to choose drug dealers here that are selling drugs to our community or whatever? I'm using that as a metaphor, right? I'm not calling politicians drug dealers or anything, but so that should not be happening. That's not a free choice at all. That's deception, right? And so, yeah, we shouldn't be exposed to that, but this is our own fault. It's not their fault because, you know, if you try to bully someone who will stand up for themselves, you know that there's a chance that you're going to get beat up. So you'll choose someone who's weak if you're a bully, right? And you'll bully them. And this is what has happened at a societal level. We've just been weak and
there's no other word for it. Lazy and weak. That's the population. We've chosen, I guess, not really, but chosen the lesser of two evils, and we've done that so much that we're at a shit show now.
Yeah, that's right.
There's no real leadership in any decision that's made, and it's just like, I mean, Scott Morrison's gets called Windsock Scotty for a reason, right? Like he doesn't seem to have any principles about him. He just seems to go with wherever the wind's blowing.
Yeah.
And that's not just picking on him either. I think that is how it is for all of them. The whole political class, I think it's that way with all of them. Self-serving interests, and they don't really care as long as they get in power and basically do what they want until the next election, and then they'll promise the world, and the people seem to forget yesterday and can't see what's in front of their nose, and
that's exactly right.
Rinse and repeat, right?
That's exactly right. And it's going to take time to educate our children or their children or their children. So the game theory of society changes from each individual, and I'm referring to us as a society, not even the ruling class, whatever words you want to use, right? Politicians, elites, rich billionaires, we'll just call all of those ruling class for now. You know, we have to get to a point where we're not playing their game, where we're not using their money, where we're not using their digital identities and stuff like that as much as what we are now. Where at the moment, everybody's using this stuff because every individual, or just about every individual within our Australian society here, is willing to a certain point to do whatever it takes as long as they get ahead themselves, right? So, and then it's just a spectrum of, well, how far am I willing to do that? A lot of people are like willing to go quite far. Others aren't willing to go as far. And the less you're willing to play in the game, the more shut out of the game you become as an individual. So, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it requires a lot more effort to get to the same place, right? Being outside of the system, in as far as education and coping with reality. Where within the system, you're not really coping with reality. You're in a fictitious environment. So, and here in Australia, for instance, what I mean by that is that the entire economy is driven by home ownership and home prices, right? Which are then opened up and equity is redrawn, that debt situation to then buy cars, and that fuels the entire economy, right? Australia doesn't produce anything. Australia doesn't. That's all Australia does. That is Australia, right? So the entire economy revolves around that single thing. And now we've got the central banks that are painted in a corner. So only pain can come in the next few years, right, to stabilize this, which is not a bad thing, right?
No,
overall.
Again, it's going to suck, and it's going to suck bad for a lot of people, but overall, future,
Yes.
it's the only way that you can, like you said, you can stabilize it.
Yes. So, okay. So getting back to the
sorry about that. Yeah.
The ID situation, right? So you then have you have a 2-layered system with a layer 1 and a layer 2, right? And the layer 1 is your attributes, the layer 2 is your activities. And then that is linked in real time, right, to the banking system, all government departments, right, and multinational tech companies like Google, right? So if you'd start looking down the bottom of your Centrelink pages, if you look carefully on some of the pages, you'll notice beta testing now in place for Google. I forgot the name of it now, it eludes me, but it's basically the data collection of Google, right? So it's linked. And this process is already in place. So what happens then is what's called a social crediting system, right? Where when you go for a loan, not only are your 100 points of ID checked, but now your activity becomes a part of the lending criteria. So what websites have you been looking at? What social media posts have you been putting up? Basically, guys like you and me are fucked. We will never get a loan, right? Because we're already red flagged, all right? And before the system even comes out, we're already, as of right today, we are already red flagged. Our digital identity is already, either black or red with a big flashing thing on the top of it, right? Now, I've had the police come over to my house a few times in the last year because, I'm in the system as some kind of a protest organizer, and the police came knocking on my door in reference to my social media posts, right? And they were holding a folder, and I just happened to see, because I approached the police officer a little bit too quickly and she didn't kind of change it, but I saw that what she was holding on the clipboard, and it had a huge bright red title in like red with my name in it, in bright red in a box with my photo, like as though I'm some kind of a terrorist, right? So they treated me very well. Like they were very respectful. Nothing came of it, right? And I don't want to make something more of that than what I should, but it's a point, right? It's already there.
Yes.
So I know that I'm already flagged.
Yeah.
I know that I'm already, when this social credit system comes in, I'm already screwed, right? So, but I already knew this like 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
So I've been preparing for quite a while. And this is the whole point. How do you prepare, right? You've got levels of doing this. Level 1, the kindergarten level, is, getting angry, being pissed off, putting shit up on social media, right, about this and that, and not actually doing anything about it yourself to like protect yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because that's just making it worse on every level. It's G'ing everyone up. It's like causing more of a blowback from the authorities, because now they've got to deal with all these people getting G'd up where that didn't necessarily have to happen. So we're co-creators in making this dystopia, right? So we're responsible because we're not dealing with it properly. Instead of just getting to work on our own situation and going, holy shit, this is becoming dystopian. This is oppressive. This is like invasive. I need to start breaking my dependence on this.
Yeah.
I need to start not being dependent on this fictitious economy with jobs and employment and stuff. I need to start taking measures. So that then starts to lead you at least in the right direction. And it may take you 2 or 3 years, but boom, you get there, right? And then after 2 or 3 years, you're now free of that. So it doesn't matter whether they then start saying, well, we're going to cut out Social Security for anyone who, you know, doesn't have the jab, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like, well, that's not even a thing for me. I don't care, right? I don't have it, and I'm not gonna have it, and it's not a thing. It's not really even a talking point anymore, right? Because I'm involved in actually just getting on with my life, because I don't want my life to be spent on social media, right? Getting angry with people who probably don't know what the fuck they're talking about, that are doing the same thing, right? We're all creating an echo chamber of ignorance and creating problems for ourselves, breaking up families and doing all that stuff. So, you know, a few levels above that, you start to actually get into action every day and start working on this. So you want to be free of the effects of digital identity, because you're not going to be able to stop it, right? The politicians aren't going to be able to stop it. It's already, the decision's already been made that that's going to happen, right? The same way that the decision was made a long time ago that central bank digital currencies were going to come into play. So it's just now, how do they do it? Here in Australia, we've got a very strong banking sector, right? So the central bank, has never dealt with you and I as customers, so it doesn't have the KYC infrastructure to deal with you and I as customers, not in the old way, let alone in a real-time, you know, infrastructure that is brand new. They don't have that, and they're not going to have time to do that, right? So what they want to do is piggyback the existing KYC infrastructure through the corporate banks, right? Yep. And they probably don't want to become an enemy of the corporate banks, because the corporate banks are very powerful. Plus, the current system relies on the corporate banks to create money, right? Which is something the central bank does not do. Commonwealth does that. NAB does that, right? And so here's the thing, that we've got a bit of a tricky situation with the RBA bringing out a central bank digital currency, because if it brings out a retail central bank digital currency that goes to you and I directly, that means that you and I will have a digital wallet in this thing, that the money goes directly from the RBA to me, right? That's cutting out all the banks.
Yes, I actually read about this the other day, and it was on a government website, I believe. I can't remember which one, but it was a government website, and they were promoting that as a good thing.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, right? No. So, you don't want to replace dealing with the supervisors, right? The guys that knock on the door saying, listen, pay up or else we'll hit you with a baseball bat. You don't want to replace them, because at least they're working class people like you, with the fucking Don turning up to your house in his like limo, right? With dudes with silencers and shit. And he's knocking on your door going like, hey, are you late on your payment? Like, oh my God, the Don's here, right? No, you don't want to deal directly with a beast like a central bank, right? Give me a CBA any day, and they're already demonic enough.
Yeah.
But you can avoid all of that when it comes into play. Not completely, but you can minimize it to the point where it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're not going to be able to completely get out of that. Because what's going to happen is CBA will have its own stable coin. So this is how they're going to do it, right? To make it work so everyone's happy in the cartel, right? So one drug dealer doesn't overstep the boundary with another one, and they all still work together and sell drugs to all of us as a cartel. So CBA will release a CBA stablecoin. NAB will release a NAB stablecoin, so on, so on. All the banks, the big banks, will have their own stablecoin, and the central bank digital currency will have the Australian dollar, right? Which will be which will be the CBDC. And your wallet will be authorized. It will authorize the CBA stablecoin, the NAB stablecoin, and then you choose, right? If you've got if you're with Commonwealth, you'll have Commonwealth stablecoins in your Commonwealth account. If you've got an NAB one, you'll have NAB, right? And each business then accepts, all the payment systems will then accept CBA stablecoin, NAB stablecoin, right? As well as a central bank digital currency. So as you can see, this is not a simple thing. It's very complex. So it's going to take time for them to get ready and put all this infrastructure in place. Now, something like Bitcoin is totally different to all of these things, right? Because when the CBA stablecoin operates, it's not being created or verified by nodes that are spread out all around Australia, for instance, that you and I can just operate from home. No, right? It doesn't even have to be on a blockchain. Mm-hmm. Will it still like have all the attributes of what the fiat currency now has? Yes, of course. It's basically just a stablecoin digital fiat currency with Commonwealth logo digitally stamped on it, right? So that's probably how the system's going to work. And then there will be a wholesale central bank digital currency between the central bank and all the corporate banks that they will trade only between each other, right? Which is basically just like a accounting ledger of plus or minus.
Yeah.
That they will do, and that will work probably something along the lines of a IMF special drawing rights type of situation, right? So the IMF uses special drawing rights, which is a form of currency that is a wholesale currency that only the IMF deals with each country, right, with the government. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't, people have got nothing to do with it. It just, that's how loans are given out and repaid. And those special drawing rights are comprised of like various baskets, if we can use that, of currencies, right? And this is probably how the wholesale CBDC will operate. So you'll have two CBDCs in place, and that retail version that we use is nothing like Bitcoin. It's not open, it's not public, it's not neutral, it's not borderless, right? Where with Bitcoin, it's completely borderless. I can send it from me to my mate in Uganda, and it doesn't go through any portals. It doesn't have to go through an exchange rate. It doesn't matter what government's in place here in Australia. It doesn't matter what they're about. It doesn't matter who they're sanctioning. Bitcoin is above all of that. It doesn't even, and they cannot implement that kind of pressure on the Bitcoin system. Even if every government got together themselves and at once tried to do that, they couldn't do it, right? And not only that, but we're seeing that Western nations are becoming friendly towards Bitcoin, right? A lot of them. So these are the things that we have to get educated on. What are the differences between the two? Because when the time comes, you want to be able to exchange value. What I mean by that is earn currency and pay in currency that is as much outside of the coming infrastructure social credit system, right? With all its different layers, you want to try to operate as much as you can outside of that.
Yes.
So be independent of it without breaking laws, without contradicting jurisdictional compliances. So you need to know that.
So without breaking laws,
yeah.
Do you think they'll ever try and outlaw it? I mean,
China outlaw Bitcoin?
Yeah.
China's outlawed Bitcoin because, and this is a multifaceted answer. Mm-hmm. So I'll break it up for you. Outlawing has not affected Bitcoin use in China at all because the Chinese government has no power to do that, right? So yes, they've outlawed it, but has it affected the Bitcoin network in China? No, absolutely not. Has anything whatsoever changed from the day before they outlawed it to the day after? No, nothing. Why? Because China's incapable of doing that. Any government is, right? So that's the first point. Just because they outlaw it, what does that mean for Bitcoin? Nothing. It doesn't affect how it works because it's outside of their jurisdictional ability to affect it. China can't launch a missile at Bitcoin.
Yeah.
China can't send a summons to Bitcoin. China can't send a request to the international law court to like send a subpoena to grab Bitcoin and put it in front of microphones to speak and answer questions, right? This is what I mean. It's outside of their jurisdictional ability to affect it. And when I mean that absolutely completely. It's not metaphorical. They can't do it. It's impossible for them to do.
So I absolutely understand what you're saying, and I agree. But as we have seen for the last 2 years, fear is a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
If the Australian government says we are going to lock people up for 10 plus 20 years, let's go ridiculous, 20 years for using Bitcoin, is that like, I mean, the way that I look at government and have for a long time is, oh, it's legal. Well, you know, now it's legal. You know, who cares? So do you think that would have to have an effect, or what? Do you think people would still use it?
Well,
You think
it certainly won't affect the Bitcoin network here in Australia.
No, not the network, but people using it, they would be affected.
Well, look, it's put it this way.
Or don't you think that they would be rash enough to do that? Yeah.
They're two different questions that we'll tackle, right? We'll tackle both of the questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, you know, drugs are illegal in Australia. Right?
Yeah.
You can go to jail for a very, very, very long time.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Now, how many people do you think are using drugs right now in Australia?
No one.
If you had to put a number,
illegal.
If you had to put a number to it, right? Wow, the number would be fucking massive, wouldn't it? Yeah. Absolutely. So it's only affected if we're talking from a mainstream fictional level, right? Mm-hmm. Then yes, it's like if you're conservative, if you're right wing, and you're going to give a speech in front of a room full of left wing people because of industry leanings, right? And you're giving a talk. You are probably going to censor your own thought process and your words. So you're not really going to be yourself, right? So that process of self-censoring is because you want to survive. Because if you say what you really think, you're probably going to get booed and you'll never be invited again, which may affect your living and stuff like that. And most people aren't up to a level in their life where they have even thought about being true to themselves to that level. And is that important? Do I want to do that? Right. So what they do is they'll just give a version that is okay with the people that they're talking to. And this topic fits perfectly into that. So yes, like it will affect things in a way that people won't talk about it. Right. It'll, you know, if you're going for a job interview with a CEO and you're like, hey, bro, do you snort coke? He's not going to be like, yeah, fuck yeah. I did 5 lines with my best buddy. You're going to meet him. He's one of the managers there. No, you don't do that, because the way we communicate, you know, requires certain decorums and unspoken codes of conduct between people. So respect is, you know, and so it's the same thing. But the reality is that, of course, not everyone, but of course, so many people are going to continue using it. They can't ban it. And the more they can ban it, but they can't affect it in that way. And the more oppressive they become, the more they're pushing it to be used. And this is the conundrum that they have. And the reason they haven't outlawed it yet is because another country will immediately put their hand up and say, we'll have it here. And they know that, and they know they're going to lose a lot of trade if they do that. So they're very careful in how they're handling Bitcoin. The reason China's outlawed it is because China's at the forefront of central bank digital currencies. China's going to be the first to release their central bank digital currency. And the Chinese jurisdiction is brutal. It's not like ours, right? It's a brutal dictatorship, and it uses violence. It uses deception on a level that Western countries don't even use, right? Because at least a Western country like the United States have to at least pretend to be the good guy, right? And do the bad shit that they do, which we all know, in a way where they're on a chessboard and, you know, everyone has to kind of think they're the good guy, knowing they're the bad guy. China doesn't even do that. They're just like, we don't care. Like, we'll shoot you and we'll send your family the bill for the bullet. Like, they don't give a shit. So they're a different kind of society to us.
Yes.
And although we're heading in that direction, we're not like that. We're not oppressive to that point that they are. So that's why they're outlawing Bitcoin, because they have to have their own central bank digital currency to get fully accepted, right? And it will be, because their population, they'll either accept it and like it, or else they'll be jailed if they speak out, you know, tortured, God knows what, probably disappear. Like their people are going to accept it. And that's what they want, which is why they've outlawed Bitcoin. Once they've got adoption of the central bank digital currency in the Chinese jurisdiction, they'll then lift that ban, right? So they've banned it, I think, close to 10 times already. Banned it, lifted the ban, banned it, lifted the ban, banned it, lifted the ban, because they're at different stages of development with the central bank digital currency, where they were offering bribes to the population, which is how they've tested it, right? And the Western countries are far behind because of their lack of infrastructure in transitioning the KYC system, right? Because they have to act in a certain way with their jurisdictions. They can't just treat their people the way that China does, because it would be revolutions, right? You can't do that. So they're bound by different unspoken societal contracts that China is not really bound by, because China can get away with this shit. So but we can't. Our governments can't. So they're lagged behind in the central bank digital currency, but it will be different to China's, right? It will operate totally differently. But the social crediting aspect, that layer that goes on top of the attributes, which is the activities, that will share the same kind of thing with the Chinese version. So when you, for instance, if you refuse to get the jab, right, you will find that when this central bank digital currency comes on board here in Australia, if we're still going down that road, right, by then, and we're talking probably, my guess is 2025, with the central bank digital currency being released here, right? Yeah. So I would say we're probably around about 2 to 3 years away from it actually being in place where we're using it, right? When it comes out, then what will happen is, if you haven't had the jab, the Prime Minister doesn't have to get on the TV and say shit, right? The media doesn't have to toe the line. No, that skips all that, because this is programmable money, right? So they're no longer relying on our behavior as such. They can just enforce it on each individual with a mouse and a click, right?
Well, it'd be AI too, wouldn't it?
Yes. Of course, like the AI will. You know,
I understand what you're saying.
On and off. So as the money comes through my wallet, right, when I go to use it, it's got my digital fingerprint on it. So, this guy's this guy's got a red flag for this. So he's not jabbed. Therefore, he's a danger, a menace to society, right? Because he can spread this
whatever.
Right. And so when I go to try to book an Uber through the Uber app, it just won't work. Right. When I go to get on a train, it just won't work. When I go to,
and that brings, that brings us to the food thing So my the real thing, like the real issue that I have is with food. So if you're talking about Uber, where it just won't work, you try and buy a steak and it just won't work. Money's there, but it just won't work. And yeah, this is like you're saying, they can control your behavior, they can control everything about it, everything about you, including what you're eating. And yeah, it's as soon as it's implemented and it's all in play, that's real possibilities. That's really real possibilities.
Yeah, well,
Control everything. Literally
the
everything.
infrastructure, all that infrastructure, everything that we've spoken about is all 100% happening. It's not like an opinion. It's not all of that is actually happening. Now, how treasuries choose to handle it as a tool, that's up to the treasury, right? But we know that under pressure, we've seen the Australian government engage and promote institutionalized bigotry and discrimination, right, against its own people. We've seen our own health ministers screaming at cameras with their veins popping out, calling us idiots, saying that if we go home and we kill our own family members, that they deserve to die, right? This is at an institutional level. We've seen that happen.
Yeah.
So although I can't say with any certainty that they will abuse the powers that a central bank digital currency will provide them with, we can say that history rhymes and that they've done it already with COVID, right? And we've seen what they've done with COVID. This will be complete next level to that. Because with COVID,
I've got no problem saying it. They will abuse that power. They will definitely abuse that power.
There's probability is on the side of what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah. And
so what?
Yeah, go.
I was just going to say, so what our responsibility is then as a thinking common sense Australian citizen and human being, you put two and two together and you say, at a very kindergarten level, I better start preparing for this, right? And if you don't, and all you're doing is posting memes on social media for the next 3 years from now, and you don't prepare for it, then, you know, when the time comes that the oppression hits and you are trapped and you know nothing about non-custodial, decentralized jurisdictions within, you know, the crypto world, like the Phantom DeFi ecosystem, for instance, as an example, and what it offers, if you've got no idea what any of that is, well, guess what? Like,
it's too late.
You know, really, well, you can learn it, but it's going to be a very stressful situation, and you've done it to yourself, right? This is the thing that we have to get to a point where we're actually taking steps to protect ourselves from being vulnerable. Like, one of the wonderful things that's going to come out of what's going on with Ukraine right now, right? One of the things that's going to happen is the disruption of supply chains when it comes to energy, food, right? We're not ready for this. Most people don't realize what's going on with that, right? And the repercussions that's going to happen here in Australia and everywhere else, right? One of the good things about that, it's going to be such a shock, right? If these guys go into the next level of war, that it's going to force relocalization.
Yeah.
It's going to force us to break a hold of the globalist model, which is detrimental, right? It's fucked up.
Yeah.
And it's going to force us to do shopping locally, to start seeking out the local beekeeper. Who is he? How do I get to his house to get honey? Instead of going to a multinational abomination like Coles or Woolies, right?
Yeah.
So we're idiots for doing this, but we're human, right? So
Convenient.
yeah, yes, we're human beings. You can't fault people. You can't call them names because they're doing that. We're all human, right? We're all monkeys.
Yeah.
We're not gods. We're monkeys. This is the whole reason why we're here, right? We'll get to being that, I don't know, 50,000 alterations of being a monkey, or something like that. But yeah, like it's going to force that to happen. And that's wonderful, right? Because if we don't do it, then we'll die. And so this is going to be a good thing. So if we get a situation where, as NATO starts building up Poland forces, right, and there's an accidental fucking shooting down of a NATO jet or something by accident, and let's face it, the probability that that's going to happen is increasing every day, right? And if that happens, then NATO responds, and now we've got Europe at war with Russia. And if that happens, energy, oil, fuel, like gas, or well, Australia's pretty good with gas, but food, our supply chains are going to be broken hard.
Yes.
Everywhere it's going to happen, and it's going to trigger a domino effect, right? And our way of life will change just on that. The great thing is, though, it's going to force decentralization, and human beings are forced into evolutionary quantum leaps. They don't choose to do it, right? A human being doesn't choose to, generally speaking, an alcoholic doesn't choose to just stop drinking whenever they feel like it. Generally speaking, an alcoholic will stop drinking when they've lost their family, when their wife's told them to go fuck themselves and walks out the door, when they can't see their kids anymore, when their mates start not seeing them anymore, and they find themselves isolated, and they're like, fuck, I've got a problem, and they burst out crying and just let it all out in some room in the dark on their own, right? And they literally hit rock bottom. At that point, they go, okay, I better start. And that's where the fight back happens, because that's how human beings are. So it's forced upon us. We don't choose to do it, generally speaking. Some do, but these people are incredible people, right? These people are, whoa, they're right up there, and they're very few and far between. So this is what I think is going to happen. We need to decentralize. We need to relocalize. We need to protect our supply chains on every level by just relocalizing. We don't need to be bringing prawns in from Thailand. It's belting fuel out into the, with these huge super tankers. We don't need to. We can get our own,
So
on all levels.
One of the things that absolutely blew me away when I first started in the oil and gas industry is I was working in the desert there in South Australia. So the oil comes out of the well in literally the middle of Australia. It goes onto a truck, onto a tanker truck, all the way to a harbour, or it's pipelined. Best case scenario, it's pipelined all the way to a port. It gets on a boat. It goes to Singapore. It gets off the boat via truck again, or best case scenario, pipeline to a refinery, gets refined, goes back to the boat, comes back all the way down to, for me, Brisbane, gets off the boat in Brisbane, trucked up a massive mountain range to the service station that I buy it from, and we can do it cheaper that way than here locally in Australia. It just blows my mind. Something is fucking broken when that happens. And
yeah, well, that's right.
And like you said, it happens with everything. You just use prawns, for example. We fucking have prawns here in Queensland, here everywhere, not just Queensland, everywhere. Everywhere there's prawns. Why are we importing them?
That's the thing, bro. That's the thing, that we offload the responsibility of governing our civilization to allow elites to do deals with each other, right? And that's why this happened. They're called trade deals, right? Yeah. Australia does a deal with Singapore, including other nations, and it's like, okay, you take your oil from there, bring it here, we'll do this here, then you do that, then we'll send it back to you, and everyone signs a bit of paper, everyone's happy, they shake hands as though we just achieved something incredible, comes out on the news that our prime minister, you know, and the Singaporean, whatever he is, they're shaking hands, flashes are going off, and they make some kind of bullshit news story about it, and we are clueless as to how that process even happened. What are the intricacies of that agreement, right?
And how much is
it's not even
they are fronting?
That's right. We're outside of that. So, you know, as the legacy systems start to continue to fail and crumble, the people need to become aware of what blockchain and crypto technologies can do in as far as voting in real time, right? With immutable blockchains. So my vote is open for everyone to see. The origination of that vote is open for anyone to check, right? So it can be traced back to me, and it cannot be edited. It can't be deleted. It can't be tampered with at all. It's got full immutability, right? And provenance. So those aspects are only available on an open public blockchain like Bitcoin that is operated by thousands of nodes that have got no agenda. They're neutral because no party has control of it.
Yeah.
And everyone just votes on an app. Boom. And everyone's vote is publicly available to everyone, right? Yeah. This is democracy, bro.
Yeah.
That is democracy.
Not that
because the government has no control.
I don't think they would ever implement anything like that, though. Voting on a blockchain.
Yeah.
Like I like the idea if democracy was ever to work the way that it was intended, that is how it would work.
Yeah. Yes. But this is the social contract, right? This is our part in the social contract.
Yeah.
As individuals, each one of us could have that democracy if we gave a fuck. But because we don't, as a whole, we get the version of democracy that is sold to us. It's like, well, you want the convenience, fine. This is then what the price is.
Yeah.
And because each household is more interested in the game theory of getting ahead than providing the foundation of a civilization with abundance for everyone, where nobody's locked out of the banking system and where everybody pulls their weight, and it's free and it's neutral and it's open, and technologies like flying into areas that are unbelievable, right? Because the scientists aren't being paid by political leanings and labs, and if you don't give us the result that we want that matches the agenda, that you're not going to get funding, right? That's not science.
No, and it happens all the time. Like I've brought up that a few times with, again, people in my circles, and I mean, it happened with sugar. Like it's a known fact that saturated fats were blamed for people getting fat because the sugar industry pushed massive amounts of money into scientific research to blame fat for making people fat, and it's just not the case. It's calories, as we all know. But you know, that actually happened. It's verifiable, easily verifiable. Everyone knows that. But now it's a new thing, and everyone thinks, again, you know, everyone forgets yesterday, right?
Exactly, bro. Try pulling that off. If every single one of the sugar executives that got together and made that decision had an immutable source that traced back to each one of them individually, the day and the time that they got together and made that decision, right? And that was public knowledge in real time, no chance is that they're going to try to do that, right? So it creates a kind of social contract where there's not two sets of rules. Where at the moment we've got a system that has two sets of rules in everything. The set of rules that can be broken by the rulers, and that same set of rules that's inflicted upon everyone else, right? So this would create one set of rules for everybody with no rulers. Because the people operate as separate nodes. So you've got rules without rulers. You're not throwing rules out. We're not talking about anarchy in the sense of classical we're not talking about that. We're just talking about self-governance. We're talking about the people acting as educated, empowered individuals that are interested in their neighbor becoming rich, wealthy, and happy and healthy as I am. And that game theory, right, protects us as a society against any ruling force that would want to come in and take advantage of us, right? Because it would be much harder to do that.
Well, Michael, you got 3 years to get that in play. If you could make
that. That's not going to happen in 3 years.
Unfortunately.
But maybe it will in 100 years, right? Or 200 years.
Yeah.
And I spent an hour with my 15-year-old son in a side street in the dark, sitting in the car, talking about this with him and his responsibility, as he grows up. He's showing interest in certain things, and I'm already having conversations with him. Like, son, you can be a world changer. You have what it takes to sit at the highest tables in organizations like the UN and everything. And, and if you choose to do that.
I'd rather not see him in the UN personally, but that's just
well, the thing is that we're going to need good people in there,
sure.
as well as out of there, right, to keep it in check, and if that's what he chooses, then the world needs people like him, 15-year-olds that are having conversations like you and I are having now as grown men, right? Yes. He's very interested. He'll watch this. He'll ask me, who is Jai? And his hero is his Uncle L, Uncle Elahai. So and he's top of his class. He's gonna be good, and so's his sister. That's so cool. And my wife, she's right into all this stuff as well. Our family moves together with this stuff, and this is how we win, one kind of household at a time, like nodes, all independently, right? All decentralized. It's not about evangelizing. It's not about changing someone's mind. I don't care whether someone agrees with me or doesn't agree with me. I care about just saying to people, if you're interested in this, then you should be actually putting effort every day into the actions that are going to make you independent of that situation, not arguing with people about it, whether it's right or wrong, or whether it's useful or not. That is meaningless. Yeah. And that is the thing. That's work. Yes.
Yeah. So that's excellent. But I wanted to ask you, like I said at the start, about the floods that are going on down there.
Yeah.
Obviously I'm up here today it's sunny in Queensland. What's it like? Where are you situated compared to, say, Lismore? I know Lismore's probably copping it the worst.
We're on the central coast, right, of Sydney. Mm-hmm. So we're around about an hour and a half north of Sydney, and we're smack bang on the water. Like we're on a kind of peninsula. Mm-hmm. On one side, one street over on this side, to my right, there is a lakefront, and to my left, there's a beach, right? So that's the coastline here. And this side is like where like a bay where the water comes in, So we're surrounded by water here.
Well, that's right.
And yeah, it is. It is. This street here is like, that got completely submerged last week, and it's been belting down on and off today. So I hate to think what it looks like from my second story window upstairs, looking out at that street, what I'm going to see there today. But yesterday I was about 30 minutes from here, and I ended up in a situation where the car had water going above the bonnet, spilling onto the car, right? Lucky I drive a hybrid and switched it into EV mode and just went through it. But it was rushing across the road quite heavily as well. And it came out of nowhere. It was while I was crossing, it turned into rapids and it just started going up. I only just got through it, right? And then the SES turned up and blocked it. And a couple of people got stuck in that badly. And I was like, holy shit, I almost got isolated and couldn't get back home.
Yeah.
So it's starting to get a little bit worrying. The force of the water, the droplets are huge. Like it's just like buckets of water just falling relentlessly with such force from the sky, So, and just seeing a lot of the images around Queensland and northern New South Wales, just incredible, seeing Macca's signs, the real tall ones with water up to just under the bloody hell.
Yeah,
That's just crazy.
Mental. I think that was Lismore. I think that's why I chose Lismore.
Yes.
And yeah.
It was coming to think of it now.
Has the New South Wales government or anything declared a state of emergency on that, or is there,
Look, I don't
help getting around, or what?
I don't know. I saw the SES yesterday they turned up pretty quickly. I don't know the level of relief that's going on here, but generally speaking, New South Wales government is usually fairly onto it with stuff like this. I don't know if they are at the moment. I don't watch news at all, right? Not on mainstream TV, and really on social media. I'm even not a lot on it in times like this, because there is so much bullshit on it that I just don't want to expose myself to that. So I'm kind of like a little bit out of the loop, right? I get information from my son, my wife, and I will see some things when I'm on social media, just because a lot of my work is on social media. So I can't rubbish Facebook and that too much, because I use it to earn more than one of my income streams, right?
Yeah.
So it comes in very handy, and it's a great tool if used correctly between friends and stuff like that. There's some wonderful things about it, as well as some horrendous things about it, right? We were talking about digital profiling before. My God, Facebook's one of the worst when it comes to that. They are aggressive, right? So the more you're on Facebook, when this social crediting comes in, like, realistically, you probably don't want to be using Facebook at all. You want to kind of ditch your profile when this comes in, because that's going to feed into government kind of databases. It's going to affect your digital profile too much in the negative side. If you're someone who's got a lot of friends who are posting things about the government that are anti-government, you're just going to end up getting red flagged as, a domestic terrorist kind of, I don't want to exaggerate it to that point, but you understand what I mean.
Yes.
So this is the problem with things like Facebook. It's not so much that it's creating data on you. It's not so much that it's creating a digital profile on you. It's not so much about any of that. What it is that your activity on Facebook and every other social media platform is going to be used against you when you go to a bank for a personal loan, a mortgage, and if you want to refinance, and any paperwork needs to be submitted, right, at any point, and they could change the laws on that and say, yeah, we know you've been approved, but now every time you want to dip into your equity, you've got to go through some sort of a process, and it will probably be online. And next thing you know, you've got like 50% equity in your home. You go to draw on it, and it's like, you failed the criteria. Why? Because of your activity. And we spoke about attributes and activity, right? Your attributes have come up okay. Yeah, we know who you are and everything. But guess what? Your activity,
no good.
You're not a good citizen, right? You're a distrustful citizen, because your activity has said this on the social media, on the social crediting platform, and the bank manager's not even in a position to make an impact on that. It's not up to him, right? This is a system that's in place. Same as like the people that are complying with government edicts and recommendations when it comes to vaccinated and unvaccinated, right? It's no use going off and calling the poor young girl at the chicken shop every name under the sun. Like, what kind of asshole are you to do that? Like, hello, it's not her fault, right? And it's not the business owner's fault as well. What do you want him to do? Like, close his business and go bankrupt because, you know, he's going to upset you? Come on.
Misdirected anger.
Yeah, like it's horrible what goes on. This is a big reason why I try not to like look on social media too much, because, you know, it's
That sort of thing is absolutely everywhere. And
yeah.
And if it's not by design, that would be very surprising, because if I wanted a population to be easily manipulated, you'd separate them all, and you know that's the perfect way of doing it, or a perfect way of doing it.
Yes.
But anyways, I'm gonna let you go. That was.
Thank you, brother. It's been a great chat, dude.
Insightful. Thank you very much. It was a very great chat, actually. It was very insightful. Before I go though, where can we find you? Your socials, handles, you know, alternate media sites if you want, because I'm on them all.
Yeah, look, at the moment, probably I'm not very active at this point because I'm just focusing on the final stages of a business that I'm launching in a couple of weeks, a few weeks. So I haven't been on social media much since about November, right, of last year. And this is all to do with what we were speaking about today, which is all about preparing for what's coming, right? And so the last 3 months has just been full on the last stage of the little dependence that I've got left, severing that. So I'm well and truly ready. And the things that I'll be talking about in my 2022 season of live streams is based on that. And I can't really talk about it if I'm not in that position, right? So, but I will be in about 2 or 3 weeks. So then I can start talking about it because then it's direct experience, you know? So, but Facebook's probably the best place to start, and it's just Michael Angel.
Yep. And what should people be doing? The number one thing, if you had to say, the number one thing, what should people be doing right now?
For themselves?
For themselves, sorry, yes, for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, for themselves is 100% unequivocally destroy with as much passion as you can in your life any dependency or reliance you have on government or banks.
Brilliant.
You do that, and oh my God, you're going to have a great, because there's opportunities abound that are going to come up that can give so much abundance. And if you do that, if you break those dependencies and everything, you're going to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, brilliant. All right. Well, I would like to talk to you at some point about those opportunities.
Yes. Well, they will become very apparent, right? Everywhere.
Yeah.
In the next few years.
But yeah, thanks for coming on. Really.
Thank you, bro.
It was great. Sweet. Let me.
I'll see you around the traps.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that.